Welcome to Variant One Shot. Today I'm going to be talking about two pretty big issues that came out this past Wednesday: DC Rebirth and Steve Rogers' Captain America issue 1. Now, if you haven't read either of those issues and you don't want them spoiled, this is your spoiler warning. There's going to be lots of spoilers going forward. Let's start with DC Rebirth. For a while now, people have been asking me to talk about what it is, but since the issue wasn't released yet, we didn't know all that much. I will say I was very skeptical though, because even though they said it wasn't a reboot, I was like, yeah, this is still probably a reboot. But now that the issue is out, we don't have to guess anymore. We basically know what this rebirth means and where the story is headed, for the most part at least. Now, even though I'm assuming the people still watching this have read the comic, I'm going to give a synopsis of what's going on. Long story short, Rebirth reveals that the original Wally West has been stuck in the Speed Force for several years now, and he's trying to break out to warn people like Batman, Johnny Thunder, who's an old hero from JSA, and his old girlfriend Linda Park. He eventually gives it one last try with Barry Allen, who doesn't remember him at first. But just as Wally West is about to be absorbed back into the Speed Force, Barry remembers who he is and rips him out. And let me just say, this moment is one of the most emotional and heartfelt moments I've seen in recent mainstream comics in a while. I actually got a little choked up, especially being the longtime DC and Flash fan that I am. This moment is just incredible, and I'm sure many of you will agree with me. Anyway, Wally then explains to Barry that the Flashpoint changing history wasn't his fault, and as Wally puts it, it was someone else, and whoever they are, they did it for a reason. He goes on to say that they did this to take years and aspects away from them. He says, "I could feel it. Even now, Barry, we're being watched." He's saying this just as Batman finds a freaking Watchman pin in his Batcave. The epilogue then further reveals it's mother-freaking Dr. Manhattan who's responsible for the New 52. I would have never guessed that Dr. Manhattan and the Watchmen is where they were going with this. It's insane and extremely exciting to see where they go from here. But besides that massive reveal, this whole issue was like a huge love letter / apology for all the things DC left out of the New 52. I actually like the New 52 and think a lot of good came from it, but there's also a lot of stuff it was lacking and things I wish was more like the old days at DC. And the major thing the New 52 was lacking was hope, light, and love. As cheesy as it sounds, it's the truth. This first issue of Rebirth even states that over and over. That's what these characters are at their core, and now it seems like we're getting back to that. I'm super excited about this and think it was a very smart way not to reboot the DC Universe, because all of the New 52 still counts and still matters. So it turns out it really isn't a reboot, just like DC said, but rather a refocus of their storytelling, telling the stories that made the DC characters such inspirations and icons in the first place. So needless to say, I love DC Rebirth issue 1, and I'm all on board with this whole Rebirth line. Also, I have to quickly mention that my mind was blown by the reveal that there's apparently 3 different Jokers running around in the DC Universe. You guys know me, Batman is my boy, and all things involving Batman is what I'm all about. So I cannot wait to find out what's going on there. But moving on to the other big issue that dropped this past Wednesday, we have Steve Rogers' Captain America issue 1. Very quickly, for those of you who don't know, in Sam Wilson Captain America issue 7, Steve Rogers got his powers back. And Steve Rogers' Captain America issue 1 picks up with good old Steve Rogers being the red, white, and blue super soldier we all know and love once again. Except with one minor setback. The end of the issue reveals that Steve Rogers, Captain America, has been a Hydra agent all along, as he says the infamous line, "Hail Hydra." This news basically broke the internet on Wednesday. Not only was every comic outlet reporting on this, it was such a major announcement that CNN was also reporting it. That's how big of a deal this has become. Now, some of you might be saying, what do you think, Arris? Are you pissed? Are you upset? You might even be saying Marvel has ruined one of the most iconic characters in all of fiction. Well, to the people saying or thinking those things, no, I'm not pissed. I'm actually pretty excited. This is a brilliant move on Marvel's part. And I'll tell you why I feel like that, because clearly this is just serving as a plot device for the bigger picture of the story. There is no way he's going to stay a Hydra agent forever. By the end of the story arc, there will be some sort of resolution that makes us understand why all of this is happening. Do you really think Marvel would permanently do something this drastic to one of their most important and money-making characters? There's no way. You gotta remember, this is comic books we're talking about. Things are rarely, if ever, permanent. Peter Parker dying and Doc Ock becoming Spider-Man only lasted like a year or so before Peter came back. Jim Gordon becoming Batman? Guess what? Bruce Wayne is now Batman again. Superman died, but that didn't last very long. I could keep going on and on with examples like these. In summary, all I'm trying to say is let's read the whole story before we judge what Marvel and writer Nick Spencer is doing. Plus, this is a pretty awesome twist and is most likely going to make for a great story. And at the end of the day, comics are just about good stories. But before I leave you guys, I just want to thank the people who made this episode possible, NHTSA. From May 23rd through June 5th, cops are stepping up enforcement to crack down on motorists who are not wearing their seatbelts. When you're not wearing your seatbelt, you risk serious injury or death. And unlike a TV show or movie, there's no rewinding and no do-overs. Why do cops enforce seatbelt laws? Because in real life, you don't get a second chance. If you get in a crash without wearing your seatbelt, you have a 50-50 chance of surviving. Compared to other things we think are dangerous like skydiving, lightning strikes, and snake bites, those odds are extremely high. So remember, click it or ticket.